started? Or am I alive? I'm not alive. Just, ah? Yes? No? Maybe? Hmm. Do you hear me? Stream is healthy at 3:16 p.m. Okay, let me see if I hear myself. I did plug in the mic since we last spoke, so. It's not hilarious how that works, though. Call that an ice breaking exercise. Okay, so. Yeah, see, I'm live. I exist. Do I hear me? I hear me good. I hear me good. Alright, so I'm gonna stop listening to myself. I'm gonna go back to my document. My document. Alright, so we just started talking about the most vulnerable people. Well, we just finished talking about the most vulnerable people, um, domestically and internationally, basically refugees and homeless, and how there's pretty much they're pretty much the most screwed by this, like all this extra regulation stuff and all this like, acting like some disease without any symptoms basically is some, I don't know, catastrophe, global catastrophe, really screwing up the people whose lives weren't actually already on the first world, say, level, for instance. And like I said, so internationally, that's just going to make people less kind of, well, more skeptical of large organizations that can pull off a lot of triangulation. And it's also going to make domestically, it's going to make self sufficiency much more important. And that leads us more, like I'm saying, it's kind of against globalism. And it's not because the globalists have lost anything so much as what they're doing right now is screwing up the international economy so much that we kind of don't have a choice but to localize more at this point. At least the littler guys for sure in in the market. Anyways, so now we are going to talk about labor shortage and the union and worker empowerment trend. So essentially what? So that's a trend for 2022. Worker empowerment, because of basically how easy it is they're making it not to work, how hard it is they're making it to work, that the people willing to work are more valuable. It's very simple. But let me go through some statistics with you. Um, so in September, 4.43 million Americans quit their jobs, which is the highest number since the year 2000. Um, so this year, 34.5 million Americans quit. That's a lot. And we're already kind of, we're a service economy. So, like I said, so they exported all our work that was actually productive, and now people here don't even want a service. Anyways, so one thing, let's look at Amazon. So workers at Amazon have formed a coalition called Make Amazon Pay. And they chose Black Friday to stage a global boycott, which I'm sure caused some comical problems. But really, they're demanding better wages, job security, and working conditions. But then they're also protesting against productivity requirements. So yeah, that's Amazon. So why is that kind of relevant? Well, Amazon already sort of has a bad name for how it treats its workers, and I've worked for Amazon, and but I didn't work in a particularly harsh environment either, so it's not like I had some opportunity to find out how good or bad they're treating people. From my experience with Amazon, they just have so many workers, and there's such a large bureaucracy that they don't care. They definitely don't care. Like, unionization is definitely a good idea for the Amazon workers. Um, but then the only thing is that that productivity requirement, that was so little when I was there. It was like almost nothing. And then they protested, I remember, and they got rid of the productivity requirement. So there would be people who would come to work and just do nothing. Um, but that has not changed anything. The workers are able to create this, and there is power in the ability to negotiate, in the ability to stand by your words and actually go on strike and negotiate and such. And yeah, one Amazon worker doesn't have much different than the other Amazon worker in their relation to Amazon, and there's certainly a lot of them, so they definitely have the power. And it's not like Amazon isn't really, really big, so do what you gotta do, guys. But that's good, because for whatever reason, these people don't value their workers. Um, so union power is going to be more trendy, as time goes on, in 2022 for sure. Especially since not only have they made it easier not to work, but if you don't want to take this vaccination, a lot of places you can't work, um, and all that. So they're making it harder, especially in these highly populated places that happen to deal with a lot of industry for lower populated places, because centralization happens on its own sometimes, and so, there's such thing as redundancy being more than a waste. There's such thing as redundancy being destructive. Um, they're also unionizing in a Staten Island warehouse for Amazon. I mean, some Amazon workers are unionizing in Staten Island. So that's another thing. So Amazon's really, their workers are waking up, and that's great. It's better than the media just insisting one thing or another, to be honest. Um, so apparently, workers at John Deere plants walked out for the first time um, in 35 years. So people are tired, you know. Another one with Kellogg's. Kellogg's 1,400 people staged a strike. So a lot of these large globalist bureaucracies are getting what's coming to them because they've been triangulating for too long, and they can't. You can't blame the guy across the border when there's really no cross-border trade going on. And so it's just like, it is what it is. And I'm glad, because as much as American standards are real high, they can get higher. That's why they're so damn low. Like, oh my god. Anyway, and yeah, it's not like you aren't working for your own life. Do what you gotta do. Be strong. Make your own decisions. Negotiate. And it's your year to do it. It's your year to do it. Just be professional. Just don't use it as an excuse to regress. Yeah. Nobody, unfortunately, these people who, well, let's just say these people don't really care if you fail and you end up as one of those poor, those refugees. So, be professional, be professional, be smart, be strong, take care of yourself. And this is a good year for union power and worker power in general. Like I said, it's hard to get a reliable worker right now. Well, very hard. So, power to you, whoever this applies to. Um, Yeah, and essentially, as much as I can criticize, like I said, not I can, I do. I criticize the mandates. They are ruining the economy. But the economy was screwed up before. Like I said, essentially, all of this was because they needed a new reason to continue the same road they were traveling before, and an excuse to continue what they were doing before, which has already been proven not to work. Does that make sense? So, though it's really annoying that people aren't working for such a obnoxiously made up a reason that they act like is super real and scientific and life and death, you know, you deserve to be paid more anyway. Inflation's been screwing you up for ages anyway, and planned obsolescence, and I'm not here to be down on you, but when you're condescending, I'm, and you're wrong, I'm gonna call you stupid, because those two things shouldn't be the same. You shouldn't be like, I'm condescending, I'm gonna double down on this no matter what happens, and be wrong. You can't do both. Um, shortage of workers and desire to employ workers and organize cause. Yeah, people don't want to work for nothing. That's the thing. And they're finally realizing that they basically have been working for nothing. If I work my ass off and I make such and such amount of money, and then you decide for me what I can and can't do with it, I have no money. I have an allowance. I am a slave, a perpetual child, a peasant, or, what was considered a normal person before the American Revolution, but nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about that because that's real history. There's real life, that's political science. It's everything, they'd like to turn back. And they'll tell you. They'll tell you about it. Be like, no, I think slavery here is worse than anywhere on earth. And you can show them, like, well, here they used to buy slaves to break their spines. And it's like, well, that's not the point, because did they fight against their kings and queens there? No. So slavery is worse here. It's like, there's no slavery here anymore, but it's worse here. There's literally slaves where you guys attack. Like, we were like, we're going to save the world, we're going to fight Coney, and now Libya is just a slave market. And you guys are like, well, it was worse here. I was like, yeah. Anyways, so to be honest with you, I'm just glad you guys aren't being hard on yourself for like 5 minutes. Because there's real shit to be hard on yourself about. And it's not, oh, your standards are too high. No. No. Anyway, so yeah, workers are in high demand, and you have the power for a short amount of time, about a year, which is great, if anything, and try to use it to make your life comfortable, because it's pretty much about as much as you can do. And the moment they try to be like, oh, and we're gonna save the entire world, and all you need to do is sell me your leg, you're just gonna lose your leg, bro. Like, that's it. So AI, VR technologies. Yeah. So AI and VR technologies are going to be the next big boom bust. For sure. And I'll tell you why. Because, well, let's talk about WeWork. I'm actually in an establishment called The Yard right now, and The Yard is competition for the more traditional one, the more conventional one, WeWork, right? The way the average bandage is competition to the Band-Aid. So what happened to WeWork? Well, WeWork was this communal office establishment, blew up, went viral, got really successful really fast, started making so much money, the guy didn't know what to do with it. And literally, like, he ended up just giving it to a bunch of people they came up with a whole bunch of different ideas, and he didn't really bother checking if any of them were profitable or sustainable or work. and he just wasted all his money, and WeWork basically collapsed. Like, there aren't nearly as many of them as there were just like 3 or 4 years ago, and it's because he had one good idea. That good idea gave him maybe 5, 6 months of good flexibility that he could use, and he didn't realize that because his good idea, oh, why don't we just get freelancers to work together, was actually really fucking simple and didn't take much vetting or thought process, and he used that as that's the way he used all his money. You know, he got lucky. He got really, really super duper awesome lucky one time, and he didn't really know that he was so lucky. And so he started giving his money to people for doing like collages, for instance, and shit. Um, you know, like not quite that direct, but sort of like, yeah, let me make an art piece. Let me make, you know, anything that you can't prove it'll be profitable ever. And he ended up wasting a lot of money because not everything is that simple. You know, not everything operates directly from fiat and all that. And so why do I bring that up? Because the VRs and the AIs are pretty much that times a million. What are they for? They're not for anything. And I play video games, and that's basically what that like means to me. Like, it's like, okay, so I can have the most in-depth video game of my life. Like, just in case there's one part of my imagination that still works after like TV and movies and video games, you know, like, oh, you can imagine you are the person. Just imagine you are. That's gone. It's now you visually, you're physically there. You don't even remember what room you're in, you know? And so you're like, why is this bad, Chris? Why is this? Well, it's not fucking bad. It's a waste. It's a waste. It's something it's designed to add value to everything else. What do you mean by this, Chris? So, degrade meat. Let's look at degrade meat. Well, degrade meat is the lowest grade of edible meat. So, if I were to make a lower grade of edible meat, that would become degrade meat. And degrade meat would become C grade meat. You understand what I'm saying? Or D plus, right? So, we could apply this to everything. They do this to everything, you know? That's how they lower standards. So now let's go back to the VR. So I can go to the park right now, whether or not they want me to, right? Due to status or what have you. And I can smell a flower, smell a rose maybe, if I'm in the right, you know, garden. But that rose is worth a certain amount. And I think of the rose as pretty cheap, you know, just to smell it, just to, you know, be around it. But what if most people only got to engage with virtual reality roses? Then all of a sudden the rose is kind of what's the word? A luxury. And that's what VR exists to do. To make real life seem like a luxury. And that's why they're rolling it out around the time when you're supposed to be socially kind of afraid of going outside and dealing with people physically in real life. So they literally have like, well, you can have your social life back. You don't go outside and you don't have to deal with any social anxiety, you know? And to a lot of people, that might sound like the answer to all their problems, you know, because they're not trying to confront anything. They're just trying to kind of have more fun. And that's fine, you know. Like I said, I do play video games. Shit. But the idea that this is some advancement is just a lie. Like, that's a TV screen on your head. That's a TV screen on your head, and basically the technological equivalent of some joysticks in your hands. And meanwhile, the real world is still going to be what runs, like, you know, society and economics. And for instance, this disease, it's not going to spread through a virtual reality. It's going to spread through, you know, the physical world. So you're not going to end up getting some, Well, there will be the rare VR job or whatever that will be more valuable than many, real world jobs. But the average real world job, it's kind of like making everything in real life a STEM field, you know, by creating a lower ring of economics for purely virtual products. And that brings me back to cryptocurrency. So that's the difference between a crap cryptocurrency and a good cryptocurrency. A good cryptocurrency provides a specific purpose. It either serves as programming for one system or another, or uh, there's one industry or business that's so dedicated to that cryptocurrency that even if it isn't a valid program in itself, that dedication creates value for it. So this being specifically designed to be artificial reality is designed to be less valuable than everything you're already doing right now. So, for instance, I'm in my not too impressive office right now, right? This office, whatever it costs, will be worth 1,000 times fucking more than the virtual version of it that they can create, no matter how much work they put into creating it. And that's just how it's going to work forever, because it's a copy. And that's always like, so this whole thing, don't fucking bother. It's basically a pyramid scheme, but there's no pyramid. There's one guy at the top, and it's flat ground under there. All right? There's no way to the top of the pyramid. Don't bother. If you want to play some video games on it, go right on ahead. Now let's talk about AI. Well, for the record, actually, anyway, but it's not really virtual reality. But they do use some of that software for good, like for surgeries, like really delicate surgeries. The software is great. It's just they're using it for crap. Anyway. And yeah, so they're just taking advantage of the situation where we're in, where we have to work on Zoom anyway. And yeah, and they're trying to sell this metaverse, and it's basically like a kiddie pool. It's an economic and social kiddie pool, the way Facebook has already become. You know, like you gotta wear the kid gloves in Facebook, right? Well, what if there was a whole reality like that? And that reality is already collapsing in on itself. So, good luck. So let's talk about AIs. Is there anything, did I even write down anything about AIs? Because I've been talking about the VR thing, because anyway, but I haven't seen anyone that's like, yeah, it's gonna do great. I heard someone ask me about it, and I was like, do you trust Zuckerberg? Because I don't. La 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 la. Yeah, and basically, you know what the issue is? This is why I'm talking. Let me be straight. So, I think to the average person, almost everything I'm saying has reached their mind at some point or another, I might not agree with everything I'm saying, but they've thought of it. Maybe they even agree with me. Kids are kids. And you provide, like, if a 4-year-old has two years of experience, that's half his life. Okay? So let's take a 10-year-old. Let's say, like, oh, they start teaching people in virtual reality and teaching people with AIs. These people aren't going to learn how to interact in the real world. That's all there is to it. And, I don't know what there is to say about that. It's very simple. This idea that we're just so technologically advanced that we can just separate from anything, nature or society or any of that, is just wrong. Let me not insult. Just be like, it's just not true. Um, so they're trying to incorporate crypto into the virtual reality sphere, and my prediction on that is that the virtual reality sphere is going to collapse, and they're going to say crypto collapsed when that collapses, and crypto is probably going to double in price within like a year or two of that, because like I said, the entire idea of a virtual, like why I was playing Skyrim yesterday, the new one, the new, well, it's 10 years old, but the one they remake it every fucking 2 years because they're idiots. Why do I play that? Because if I were to try that in real life, I would die. I play it because it's less valuable than my real life. That's virtual reality. I'm not going to make any money playing Skyrim. I might make money having people watch me play Skyrim. That'll be it. Um, but yeah, they are trying to make this stuff real. And see, and that's the thing. So, like I said, so the virtual reality technology, they do use it for some really delicate stuff, but none of that stuff happens in virtual reality. And all of that stuff is highly specialized, like I've been to college for 10 years stuff, at least. Because it ranges from surgery to space exploration, okay? And that's why they have, scientists and doctors and AI doing it. And so, why am I saying this is the boom and bust? The next boom and bust? Because none of this shit applies to you. It's not like the crypto where there's like a huge portion of them, they're all con artists and all of this. These people aren't even pretending this shit applies to you or will be valuable. They're like, oh, well, do you like it? Take it then. And that's it. That's all it is. It's a toy. It's a really great toy, like drones. Drones are used for some really important stuff. And the average person doesn't make jack shit off drones. So, was there a drone boom and bust? Probably not, because probably the average person knows that they don't have that much to do with that thing. But we're really teched up. Like, the average person probably thinks that Facebook is only half as much of a total waste of their time as it is. And so VR, the metaverse or whatever, is going to go right under people's radars, and it's going to work for a certain amount of time, and then a new fad will come out, and it'll collapse in on itself. And hopefully the kids won't be screwed by then. And that's my trend forecast for 2022 in terms of VRs and AI, because even the AI is designed not to be human. I know that people like to think it's the opposite, but that's because, the humans are the only working intelligence that we got. So that's the intelligence part. The part, what am I saying? I'm saying that it's not healthy for a human being to be raised interacting and trying to satisfy an artificial intelligence. That's all. And they are designed to make cold, rational decisions, intuitively. That's the difference. Not designed to make human decisions. We have people that make human decisions. They're human. They are designed specifically to do inhuman things. So the idea, like, okay, let's pair this with a toy. Let's pair this with a toy that's designed to simulate reality for a person, is kind of like, well, yeah, it's like if I gave my kid to a robot to educate. It's fucking stupid. Anyways, so so in 10 years there will be a mature metaverse technology, and by then nobody will care. Like how I don't take the subway very seriously, that'll be metaverse. By then it'll have collapsed in on itself to the degree that we don't even recognize it. But yeah, my advice in terms of virtual reality is that if you see someone doing it like repeatedly, to kind of treat them like they just tried heroin. Um, it's it's, uh, it's what I would do. Just telling you the truth. And I'm a guy. As soon as I'm done with this, I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna play freaking Skyrim. Okay? I'm no better than you. But let me tell you, those people aren't. It's not real. It's not real life. And that's why I do it on purpose. It's not as valuable as my real life, and I can fuck it up. I'm not gonna spend too much time on it. Anyways, let's continue. So, we're gonna get to my favorite part. My favorite part. Globalism collapsing in on itself. Say it again. Globalism collapsing in on itself. So, like I said, so because of all of these lockdowns and because of international political unrest, self-sufficiency is basically going to be the key to surviving the next year, at least, right? Because you can't really rely on the large bureaucracies. They're just totally full of shit, unfortunately. So you end up having to find a trick in that, and that just makes them even more unsustainable. So then, again, the end is self-sufficiency. So you never have to deal with them again. And the truth is that the reason why they're treating you with such disrespect is because you're not self-sufficient. And I'm not saying that, even when they treat you with respect, you probably shouldn't treat them with respect. It's globalism. It's a giant bureaucracy that represents absolutely no one, that has no loyalties, and admits it to you, and condescends to you for having loyalties, and a background and opinions, and your own culture and religion and shit. Because you exist and it doesn't. So you have weaknesses and it doesn't. It's been a con from the start. And people are starting to notice, because everywhere on earth that you go, they'll say, oh, how will other people look at us if we don't do this, including America. It's pathetic, by the way. So people are real tired of giving a fuck what other people think, especially when they don't know what the fuck they're talking about, let alone if they know the truth and it's just their fucking opinion. So here's the thing. So before, globalization wasn't always kind of a thing. Like, globalization historically is usually how, like, I guess extra rich people take advantage of supply and demand, In fact, there's evidence that the reason why people thought the world was flat was because Phoenicians, one of the first people trading, they were the ones giving out maps, and they would just hide the maps of places that other people didn't know about, and be like, yeah, there's nothing past there, the world is flat, so that they could do business, and the other person wouldn't know that there was anyone over there to do business with. That's why the people used to think that the Phoenicians invented glass. The Phoenicians didn't invent glass, but the Phoenicians weren't going to tell you where they got the glass. They'll tell you they invented the glass. And we're right here, and we're almost back. We're not even back in the Middle Ages. We're back in the fucking Dark Ages. We're back the Bronze Age collapse, okay? People know how to fucking write in pictures again. Anyway, so globalization started, and I mentioned it before, and we started sending our labor, our jobs basically across seas, and importing cheap labor, and and acting like everything in between was kind of, with postmodernism, everything is just an opinion, right? Which makes your opinions extra invalid. So there was really no criticism, and these people were making extra money. So here we are. Now we really Well, first off, while that was happening, China turned out was the one maximizing its profit off this because China doesn't mind uh, treating its lower class like they're like the bottom of your shoe, and they have lots and lots of people. So like, doesn't matter how many commit suicide on the job to them. Um, yeah, like they've been dealing with this bullshit much longer than us. And they're not like when someone says, "Oh, that statistic is fake." They're just doing it for propaganda. It's a very Western thing to be skeptical of that just offhand. It's not an Eastern thing. In the East, they know, like, oh yeah, the government's full of shit because it shouldn't be there. Like, but they know, they don't fight it. But China's been making a lot of money because it has a way of regulating people into working for change, basically, and it does still have some rich people there, so they can emulate some market. Um, and yeah, and now they have an expanding middle class, and our middle class is literally gone. We have property taxes here now. Nobody owns any property. We have no middle class. We haven't for a very long time, and they think here they think middle class means that you have like a nicer apartment and you work for more money. So these people they're just out of the game entirely and have been for generations, the Americans, and they're confused why anyone wants them, to compete. But meanwhile, the people taking over are enslaving everyone. And it's like, well, you didn't want to enslave everyone. That's why they want you in charge. And they don't want to hear that. They want to hear something else. Anyway, so China really started the Great Reset thing, and they're starting a policy called dual circulation. So dual circulation is essentially, instead of trying to be a global economy like they were, because they were liberalizing too much. So now, like Jack Ma, for instance, he has enough power to argue with Xi Jinping or whatever. So they're really mad. So their middle class has gotten too big, too powerful, and globalization was making it so outside money mattered. Jack Ma was able to speak truth to power with power from outside the country. And China's all well and good with globalization when they're deciding the terms, but their culture is actually kind of evolving, which is obviously is great. I love it. I want it more of that, more diverse China. Hell yeah. But they noticed it, and they didn't do this by mistake. They didn't create a giant death cult by mistake. And they noticed, like, oh, this is screwing up everything because people are noticing that there's a way out. And our whole philosophy is that there's no way out, that everywhere is just like here, which is part of why I'm kind of mad at you guys for going along with this, because the people actually in a bad situation, you're just a bunch of fucking sellouts. But that's not the point. The point is that, so they noticed, and now they're doing a dual circulation thing where they don't rely on globalism so much. And, yeah, so these people who've been making money off, like, paying someone in China, like, 10 cents an hour, they're mostly fucked out of luck. They're at least 50% fucked out of the luck they had 2 years ago. You know what I'm saying? And probably more. Probably 60, 70%. But essentially, China is decoupling from the rest of the world and sees itself separate, more so, and is being more self-sustaining. And since they were our main source of foreign labor when it came to things we wouldn't do to our own workforce, even if they're undocumented, that is having a big effect on the global economy. And yeah, self-sufficiency is good. Shit, learn some STEM fields. Like, figure it out. You can do it, and it's not like charity's out the window. It's just like, yeah, we should have been more self-sufficient. Like, why were we letting the slavers build all our stuff? We never lost the ability to build stuff. We made a law. And then people started saying that it was racist for me to want my neighbor to have a job. Like, get out, shut up. Maybe you need a job. So yeah, but China doesn't give a fuck what anyone thinks, right? China, while we're talking, we're throwing words at each other. Um, they didn't even like have a political talk like, oh, should we decouple from globalism? It's like, no, no, we decided today that we're just not going to do business with you. We say it's because of this virus. And they've just been like that for years and years, like at least 2 years now, right? um, and yeah, it seems like the people who are doing the mask stuff and the mandate stuff generally are the ones saying, we should try to make them happy. Maybe if we make China happy, they'll start working with us again. That seems to be it. Because there's no way they're going to make that much profit off anyone else. Like, no one else is going to build a shoe for 10 cents and sell it to you for $100. Do you know what I'm saying? Because that was never valid economics. That was always so one guy could take all 10 cents and the other person gets to live in a box, the shoe box. You know what I'm saying? That was never a like, oh, and this works, this actually, like, no. Like I said, it's just when one person dies, they have lots of people to fill them. Large population, very diverse, very, tribalist. So, they can be real petty. And that's what's been happening, and we've been taking advantage of it because we weren't petty enough here, apparently, for these people to be making their fucking money. And now even our GE, even General Electrics, it's not, now it's government electrics and all that. Anyway, I'm gonna close this. So, wave of nationalism. So yeah, China's having a wave of nationalism. They're no longer buying Coca-Colas. They're buying like something called Crumbly or something. They're no longer buying Nestle. They're no longer buying Maybelline. So China is becoming, well, I don't know if they're actually becoming nationalists. I should say the Chinese government is trying to trick its people into becoming more nationalist, kind of at the last minute, sort of. Um, yeah, and it's interesting because nobody's talking about it. And it actually has a global effect. So even though nobody's talking about it, China is saying, well, China first, and it's having global effect where economically, and they're having to go, oh, it's this virus. But like I said, you remember the story they told us about the virus that was coming and the virus that came. Like the story they told us about the virus that was coming was like, oh, this is lethal, and the virus that came was basically the flu. Um, so yeah, so you could see that what really happened was that we gave China so much of our economy, and we listened to, rich sellout idiots that legitimately either don't care about or hate human rights, and they're willing to double down on the possibility that maybe China will let its own people rebel just to satisfy some rich bureaucrats in the West. And I don't think they will. Don't get me wrong, I think the rebelling Chinese will win. I know the rebelling Chinese will win. Like I said, China is super diverse. China has this deep culture. It's beautiful. Has traditions older than I can comprehend. This cult's been fucking maybe it's about to be 100 years, or it's 100 years now. That's a fad for them. That's like when I was buying Pokemon cards. That won't last. That's why they need to they started undoing their whole globalist thing, and now all the globalists don't even know what to say. They have to say the same lines that would only work in China, where they know their government is full of shit. The lines don't really work in China. Like really, the only reason people here are pretending so hard to believe everything that's being said is because we're not used to hearing such bullshit, like spoken by people we hold in authority, on TV or not. Like this has been absurdly out of character for the West, and the West is being gaslighted about it. Like, oh no, this is normal. You're crazy. What you believe in isn't real. And if you talk to anyone else, they're like, no, this is fucking, well, this is abnormal. This is what we come to you to avoid. Why are you acting like this? And the people here just like, but when someone said I was the worst person on earth, I was told that to agree with them was good, was immoral. And it's like, well, when you're the only person, let's say, that doesn't abuse your spouse, saying you're the worst one's actually a disservice to everybody, right? Like to all the people being abused anyway, to the people that abuse their spouse, to the domestic violence people, it's, yeah, you're the worst. You're the reason why I do what I do, in fact, and you get what I'm saying, and we're right here in this position, where the one group of nice people is like, but if I'm proud of being a nice person, isn't that bad? And it's like, no, who told you that? The Catholic Church. I was raised Catholic, I can say that. Okay? Don't bother. Don't listen. Ignore. Walk away. And I already did a whole video on class and what class really is. You can look at it. It's beautiful. You're good. You don't need them. So yeah, they're buying some soft drink called Genki Forest instead of Coca-Cola, and Squirrel Snacks instead of Nestle, and all this. They got their own brands, and I don't care. I'm just happy that maybe our crap brands won't be held up by some international inhuman menace. Meanwhile, the China's got this thing called the Belt and Road Initiative. So that's kind of, how did we start this? We started with this by saying the Chinese are creating this thing they call the dual circulation policy. So they have the internal circulation, which is the self-sufficiency, which is what we should be doing as well. And there's also this thing called the Belt and Road Initiative. So basically, China and Russia have been basically fighting over who gets to complete what they call the new Silk Road. Once again, to me, seems like total fucking waste of time. But then, if you're going to regulate everything and force everyone onto a single way of doing things, all of a sudden it's not a waste of time, right? But they've been doing this Belt and Road Initiative for at least 10 years, and it was a bad idea for 10 years, and then the lockdown happens. It's like, oh, you mean we all have to do everything in a certain... All of a sudden, this single road is very important. And it's like, no, these people have fucking terrible, fucking stupid ideas for decades and decades and decades, and we just invest so much money into it. And then at the end, when they're fucking wrong, everything that they were saying was based on like some superstitious idea that someone came up with like 300 years ago, they make up some shit and go, well, it's science. Well, it's science. And you know what fucking happens? There's usually starvation, the system collapses, and on the other side of the world, they got idiots going, they didn't starve because of that, they starved because of nature, and they weren't even really trying to make the perfect utopia. When we try it, it'll work. That's what happens. Anyway, so let me tell you, this Belt and Road Initiative, the entire point is just to be able to regulate. Like, basically, if you could have one lever of political power that controls many countries at once, like the European Union, for instance, but that expands past the European Union. That's it. That's their Belt and Road Initiative. We got roads. Okay. It's done. All right. But the thing is that China's actually investing in foreign infrastructure through loans, and that's how they basically accrue client states. So China basically got the jump on us, and they're now accruing client states while we're still trying to act like it's 3 years ago. Yeah, so it's probably a good idea for us to become self-sufficient. I'm not even saying, oh, we should accrue client states. I think that's a mistake. No, we don't need any more client states. Let's pay back what we owe, and stop doing business with jackasses. How about that? Like, why is that so hard? That was originally why this country was founded, but no. Um, but other countries are paying attention because most countries aren't spoiled by like first world nonsense. So when China started doing its self sufficiency, other people started becoming more self sufficient, other countries. And even the US and Joe Biden uh, put 50 billion apparently into the semiconductor sector. And I have to say, hey, that's better than nothing because at least maybe we'll be making semiconductors in our own country. Like, Jesus Christ. Even households, because if you just put money in there from the government, you're not giving money to somebody who produced anything. So it's the same reason why I don't just give a $50 bill to a crackhead, because that crackhead doesn't all of a sudden know the best way to spend that $50 bill, does he? So I can tell the crackhead, here's a $50 bill. Use it to make semiconductors. Okay? And he's going to do what he was going to do with it in the first place. So that's all I know about this. Do you understand? But at least the gesture is good. We should be making our own semiconductors here, and everyone should be, to the capability. I come from a country that's the size of New York City as a whole, okay? My country, if we wanted to, we couldn't build fucking jack fucking squat. We could build a brick out of the rocks. We harvest salt. We've got some pretty pictures we can take, okay? You guys have fucking civilization itself basically in your right hand. The idea that you can't build your own semiconductors is pathetic. Never bother me with your globalist bullshit. Stockpiling toilet paper. So yeah, and exactly. And the thing about the COVID crisis is, like, you might be wondering, okay, so why would, because not everyone agrees, right? So people will be like, they? Who do you mean they? And it's true, because when you look at the people in power, they don't all agree. But why would someone who disagrees with this whole globalist thing, allow this? Because it's actually having a positive effect on the oppositional force as well. The oppositional force is becoming more self-sufficient. The oppositional force is becoming more self-aware, while their side's having to double down, triple down on their way of being things. Our way of being things was never centralized bureaucracy, and that's why centralized bureaucracy was our weakness in every possible way the whole time. Yeah, this place wasn't designed to be a centralized bureaucracy. This place is where people go to avoid centralized bureaucracy. It always has been. Before we got here, people were running away from Aztecs north to avoid their centralized bureaucracy. This is how it is, this nature, and as we go up, civilization goes up, science goes up, the poor go up, as well as the rich. And as this shit goes up, what's been happening? The kids are starting to have strokes, and they have to put fucking signs on the side of buses. Kids have strokes too. Like, get out. Like, when I heard in so many countries the suicide rate for kids was higher than the COVID death rate, I heard that fucking, how long ago? Months ago. Nothing fucking changed. Even more fucking obnoxious now. The beginnings of this new awareness was, yeah, okay. And yeah, we're a large country, like I'm saying. We're not we're not we're not in the third world. We shouldn't be acting like we don't have resources, like we don't have people, like we don't have education. We shouldn't be begging. We should be building something. We should be creating something. Um, and you know what's hilarious to me? I've never had someone complete a job for me and been like, oh, something about how this looks or sounds makes me ashamed. That's never happened to me. I don't know why. Maybe there's something wrong with me. But to me, it seems like that's a big problem with you guys. Like that's a problem with, like, when I go to Europe, they have the problem much worse. And that's why people get away with lying about the living conditions in Europe. You know, because the Europeans are so worried about how they look to other countries. Yeah. Like, I've had an experience where for years I was told by people in my ancestral country, let's say, like, oh, you guys don't have health care. I heard healthcare costs so much over there. Da, 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 da. And I don't come from a family without problems. You need health care once in a while, right? So, and one day, someone else that we knew happened to have a similar problem to something my father had. And my father, he's a maintenance worker. Anyway, he's not doing badly, let's say, but he's a maintenance worker. He's not doing incredibly well in context of quote unquote America or whatever. And he had to get a surgery on his spine, and then someone else, turns out they have the same problem. And when they found out that he even had the surgery, they were like, what? But they don't even allow us that here. And that was that. Because over there they have supposedly free healthcare or whatever. They've got the universal healthcare. But universal what? If we get universal sanitation and everyone's allowed one tissue paper, then I'm still not going to get a shower, am I? It's just everyone gets one, right? And I'm not saying that makes our system perfect. Our system's way off perfect. It's disgusting. We handed it to the insurance companies. It's pathetic. Like, what is this? Just stop. Anyway, but it's not like, oh, negligence, death sentence through negligence and lying to people and acting like something's impossible, and then telling the people, smile and tell them you have good health care. Like, I lived there for a while, and I heard from many people, like, there's a lot of things that they'll treat you for a year, like things like eye problems, for instance, that they don't treat you for there at all because they're not life-threatening. And they just, their idea, like, not their idea, but what they generally do is, if they can avoid treating you, they get paid by the hour, and then eventually you get really old and you cannot function on your own anymore, and then they house you there. And it's the same. If they avoid treating you, they do. But now your family doesn't hear the complaints. That's it. That's universal health care. Alright? And we got no property taxes too. So you can't say, oh, you can't provide universal health care without the taxes. No, we don't have a lot of the taxes that you have here, and we have more free shit. And it just turns out that free shit from the government sucks. And they just wanted to take the money you would have made producing it yourself and the product you would have gotten out of it at once, legally, and have you thank them for it. And in most places, they didn't invent the computer chip. They didn't invent the airplane. They weren't like, based on like a fundamental canon of human rights and freedom. No. In other places, it's the opposite. Oh, where did you get this? A better person gave it to me. Someone from a better place. Someone from, I don't know, they must be better. They really believe in class. Here, we try to convince ourselves that capitalism enforces class because we feel like when someone has more than us, it makes us feel small. There, if you're born into a certain family, you get certain rights. And if you're not, you're not. Not because of how someone feels, but legally, on paper, specifically. And that's how all countries have been for millions of years, up until America, who stopped it. Isn't that hilarious? That was just called citizenship. The idea of human rights was just, it just doesn't exist until, anyway. But no one wants to, no one cares anyway. They pretend to care for cameras so that the people who actually have problems don't hurt them. Okay, so now we're going to get to my favorite part. New York City and cryptocurrency. So cryptocurrency is already mainstream. And New York City basically has no choice but to capitalize or lose its significance. So New York City is basically, you know, the if Israel tries to be, well, anyway, let's just say New York City is a very important trade city, right? And has been for a long time, at least for a couple of hundred years. And yeah, so cryptocurrencies have a way of toppling. Well, for instance, cryptocurrency destroys classism in like immediately. So I know a guy. He's a millionaire off Bitcoin, right? Let me tell you about this guy. This guy, I don't know if he had the mansion before. Now he's got a mansion in Staten Island. This dude may as well be just some guy I met in high school. He's not. Have you ever heard the term weeb? He is a weeb. Okay, he's really into the person who made Inuyasha, the anime. This guy just chills all day, sits and watches anime, and eats fucking junk food, basically. He's a large man. And why he's a millionaire now because he bought some crypto. And you might realize that this contains all the stuff about money and capitalism that, like, generally people are like, oh, that's just arbitrary cruelty. You know, anything could happen, that's wrong. But you might also realize that real life has always been like that. It's always been like, I could walk outside right now and get struck by lightning, and there's no moral sense behind it, nothing I can do about it, and the only intelligent thing I can do about that specific context is try not to be, you know, struck by lightning, not try to make it right or wrong that I be struck by lightning, because that's not how lightning works. Lightning isn't an ought, it's real, it's objective. So what I'm saying is, yeah, turns out nature's not that bad, even in chaos. And yeah, cryptocurrency has a way of capsizing economies by returning security to the economy. Like, for instance, why was I talking about property taxes? Because with property taxes, you don't own your own property. If you have to pay rent every so often, you don't own anything. So you're not going to be able to keep it. So there's no reason to buy it unless it's making you money. You understand? So they've actually made property in America less valuable with their property taxes, and they're still taxing you for it, which is hilarious. And what? How did I even get here? Yeah. Oh, yeah. So basically, they've been devaluing the currency, devaluing your land, devaluing everything you could possibly work for, right? Because you gave them legal authority over that stuff and over the, you know, how much that stuff is allowed to be valued for. You know, you gave them legal authority over how much you work for, you know, and the terms you're allowed to do work for somebody for, right? So the thing about cryptos is that cryptos don't exist within any legal jurisdiction. It's like international waters all the time, which is actually how these people make money. The really rich, they're taking advantage of international trade rules. And that's what crypto takes advantage of, because believe it or not, with less regulations, those people don't screw with you. And so your stuff is much, much more valuable. So Bitcoin, which people have been saying, is some garbage that idiots came up with for the last 10 years, it started out being a couple of cents, and now it's about 60,000, right? And why is that? Well, that's because it's impossible to tax, it's impossible to regulate, and so, people have nothing to do but take care of it. And when people are left responsible for things, and the consequences are only theirs to deal with, things only get better. And the collectivism somehow just fucks it all up. And you can study it scientifically. I don't know why. It's not something I think ought to happen. So what? So cryptocurrency is helping people by giving them something that they can trade and keep and work for, that does not steadily devalue with time, that doesn't break after 5 years like these cars they make nowadays, that doesn't need to be reprogrammed every month or what have you. And yeah, Ethereum is sort of like the mainstream of crypto. A lot of the different diversity, coins, different diverse coins are Ethereum coins, and many of those do very well. And what makes Ethereum so useful is that it's a network, right? So it's kind of like I was just saying. So a lot of these cryptocurrencies are fucking worthless. Why? Because they don't connect you to anything, and they don't connect you to anything, and they don't provide anything. So what am I saying? So Ethereum, by being a connection and being a network, a digital network, provides basically that network. I do have a criticism of Ethereum, in fact, because it provides the same network to everyone. But that's not the point. The point is that Ethereum is right now very safe, it's doing very good, and there are many options on Ethereum that in the short term will be a better choice than Ethereum. The one thing about you all being on a single digital network is very dangerous, because once that network goes down, all of your cryptocurrencies go down at once. And so I'm not going to touch Ethereum, but it's doing good right now. And that is evidence that this shit works. And that, it's like Ethereum looks to me like the WeWork of cryptocurrency right now. It's like, we'll just do everything. Sounds like a terrible idea. Maybe you should just make a fucking structure and try to take care of it instead of trying to do everything. Anyway, so what? So NFTs. People are making quite a bit of money off NFTs, because NFTs are actually like small, modular, individualized cryptos, and so a lot of people are selling them just kind of as GIFs or JPGs or whatever. And that's not quite what they are. What they really are, or not, it's not that it's not that. It's like, if I make origami and I tell you, oh, this is a piece of paper. Not every piece of paper is an origami, and the origami is much more valuable than a normal piece of paper. So that's the difference between a valuable NFT and a not valuable NFT, just like everything else. Just like if I were to have a bar of gold and another 2 bars of gold, and in 1 bar of gold I printed a star on that bar of gold, I could charge people more for the bar of gold with the mark on it. Literally, I could charge more for both of them if there's only 2 bars of gold on Earth, because now they're both unique bars of gold. Like individualism always was on your side in supply and demand. Like the fact that minorities are more valuable is why people oppress them. And it's not about race or anything. It's just, so the idea that, oh, it was more valuable people oppressing the less valuable, like that's all been opinion, subjective value theory. There was never, like, this idea that you let them tell you that the classists were right and the racists were right, and like, oh yeah, and there's strong people oppressing rich people, poor people, and it's like, no, no, y'all are oppressing each other. Y'all don't know how to take care of yourselves. I don't know what to fucking do. I'm trying to give you a global context, and it's not gonna work. You're just gonna blame me. So there's a game called Axie Infinity where you can earn NFTs. Um, yeah, and so here's the thing about this. This is actually really good for people living in third world countries. So, and I've met people like this. Like, there's people in China, for instance, that they play World of Warcraft for a living. Now, you might be like, well, what's the difference between that guy and, the thing you just said about virtual reality? Isn't World of Warcraft basically virtual reality software that makes, your life more valuable and World of Warcraft worthless, but, you keep spending money on it? Yes. But the third world guy was taking advantage of us wasting our money on it. Do you understand? And he spent, because he works fucking 16 hours a fucking day, right? He spent his 16 hours, instead of working for some asshole making a computer chip or making a shoe, he made the perfect World of Warcraft character, perfect dwarf or some shit. And he sold it to a guy who makes lots of money and wants to play World of Warcraft but doesn't want to level up his character. And maybe he sold it for, $500, and in his country, that shit is much more. So NFTs are actually amazing for that, for people who are very below, let's say, the first world level, and who can, through a little game, kind of interact with us, and that interaction in their own world is very valuable and very important. And that's why there's not a problem. Like, I don't have a problem with hiring third world people, and you will end up paying them less, but if there's a suicide net, and then you pay them 18 cents, and then you charge the guy buying it like $1,000, I think there's a fucking problem. you know like, these are specifically the worst people. Anyways, but so NFTs, because they're a little modular individual coin, it's like the moment, like, what if the moment I got a Bitcoin, not that I own a whole Bitcoin personally, but let's say if I got a Bitcoin and instead of just being a Bitcoin, there was one Bitcoin on earth called Bitcoin, and I owned it. That's what an NFT is. It's like every NFT is individual, and it's not that every cryptocurrency is an individual, but every cryptocurrency is individual the way every dollar is individual. There's like several digits that are different, and if you know how to look for them, you find them and you find the difference. Whereas NFTs, every single one is individual, every single one is supposed to be an individual piece of art, and that's part of why they're selling them off as artwork right now. But the thing is that it's not just visual art, is I guess what I'm saying, and don't think that it is visual art or just visual art, because you could very easily buy something thinking, oh, this is the new NFT thing that people are talking about, and really the NFTs people are talking about are these complex programs that can be used, and what you got is maybe just a JPG. So in September, El Salvador became the first country in the world to accept Bitcoin. The SEC finally approved Bitcoin ETF for mainstream investors. It's already mainstream. So New York City, if Eric Adams, okay, a guy I want to like, okay, doesn't kind of wing it a little bit and help kind of cryptos become mainstream on paper. See, that's the thing. So New York City is just another place, right? Everywhere has powerful people somewhere, people in charge. And those people always are the ones who know how to be powerful. New York City was never different from anywhere else, except that it was possible that if you came here, you could be one of them. And I know, again, there's a political side that goes, oh no, nobody's ever done well in this country. You know, it was all a trick, it was all a lie. And I was like, no, like, you're spoiled. I come from better, and you come from better, and we all come from better. And you literally think that the spoiled person is the person that would stand up for their upbringing. And that's not actually true. But, yeah, so what's happening here? So basically, New York City, and it's already started making little moves towards it, basically has no choice but to adapt to cryptocurrency because we already are a fast, cutthroat economy. And that's kind of what crypto is. Crypto is officially faster and more cutthroat than the actual Wall Street people. And good. Fuck them. Um, but that's free market capitalism. Free market capitalism was never, oh, and the rich people are all of a sudden all powerful and have a monopoly on everything and are basically God. That was some propaganda nonsense. And, all you had to do was get away from those people. And we did, and we made a country. And here we are. Anyway, so the U.S. can pursue a flexible regulatory framework. They basically just need to do, to a degree, of what they do with like the $50 billion that went to semiconductors. Literally you don't even need 50 billion. You need 20,000, because when someone's printing out money and handing it out, you basically can't compete unless you either get off on your taxes or someone prints out money and hands it to you. Especially in New York City, shit. The only, and that's the thing. If the government here doesn't pay them to compete, they would have to pay just to compete. And they don't need to, because they're already making money without that market. You see? So you could say, you have a monopoly over the whole community, and you can make it illegal for the people in your community to do business with these people, and they're still making more money than you while your economy collapses in on itself. So, and you may think oh, well, they need me, they got cryptocurrency so that they can go to the fancy restaurant in the middle of New York City. And the truth is no. Like I said, I know the millionaire guy. He's perfectly happy sitting at home and watching anime. Power to him. He doesn't need your ass. You need his ass. You should pay him to do business with you. Especially since your money is worthless and he's a nice guy if he accepts it. Maybe since everything you've done is a wash, it's time not to be condescending to people that are better than you. And the crypto people are that. And that's why they don't need free money. That's why you need to give them free money. For you. Anyways, the other... and see, exactly. And other countries have created sandboxes, like economic sandboxes for crypto, believe it or not. And New York City had already done that recently, where they had some free trade, not for crypto, but they call them free trade jurisdictions or something. And so America in New York City is already basically primed to do it. It's one of those things where if they don't do it, it's just kind of to fuck people over. And chances are they are going to do it, because they haven't said they're not going to do it. And they're not mentioning it, which means they're probably going to do it. Because what they, I'll act like not everyone knows what they do. They tell you specifically the wrong thing was going to happen. The wrong thing that's going to happen. So for instance, you're supposed to think seaside property is not valuable because the sea level is rising. And you'll notice that all these people, Al Gore, Bill Gates, Bernie Sanders, all these people, they bought seaside property. There's no way that they believe the things that they are telling you. And they know that it is in their best interest to tell you these things, because that makes the price go down and they buy it. So it's like, if I wanted to buy a house, well, and I'm an asshole, I convince the neighbors that the house is dangerous and ugly, and then when I go there, it's half price. That's basic. They do that with everything in economics. That's why they've been telling you that crypto is not good. It's specifically because it's good. They're never going to admit they're wrong about anything either, because that one person that's dumb enough to believe them, that makes them a little bit of money and makes them feel smart and intelligent. It's really a superiority complex. It's psychology, but not right now. Yeah, Facebook is changing its name to Meta, because that's Facebook just forfeit, okay? It just forfeit. It admitted what it was trying to do, because meta means the thought process behind everything. So this guy basically admitted what he wanted to be, and instead of trying to organically become it, has given up. And I'm fine with that. I approve. But yeah, so quote unquote, the people, the elites, but it's not really the elites, it's whoever is controlling the message you hear, they're not really happy about crypto, because like I said, crypto makes them, well, it proves they're normal people, living out a set of circumstances and not like some master race or something. And so they don't really like crypto very much. Yeah. And so what? So China, the way it's set up with like a one-party system and central regulation, it cannot feasibly embrace cryptocurrency. They're trying to kind of wing it with this digital currency called that's basically the digital yuan, I believe it's pronounced. Anyway, so they're trying to wing it like that, and the entire point of that is that it's not cryptocurrency. Like, there is no winging it. So what am I saying? So they basically can't adjust the cryptocurrency, because they need control over everyone. Like, they need it. Like, you could be relatively rich in China and still be unhappy with how it's run. You could be poor in China and still be unhappy with how it's run. And let's say you're in the government, you're in the party, you're one of the warlords. You probably want to be top warlord and aren't happy with how it's run. It's a shithole. But this is an advantage, okay, so now we finally have something that we can do that they cannot do, because they don't have the stomach for it. For ages it's been like, oh, these people have the stomach for work, these people have the stomach for this, these people will ignore this and ignore that, oh, no, we trade a lot, and we like diversity, and we like, competition, and yeah, and communication and all that. We like that stuff. And so this is something where America, and not just America, the West, but America mostly, like America, Portugal, UK, Israel if it wants, this is something that we can do that they cannot do. It will destroy them. It'll destroy the government that's already collapsing in on itself. And our government, we kind of want it to collapse in on itself, right? So let's do it. Our culture was never held up by a government in the first place. I'm not going to stop being nice to my neighbor because the laws change. And, when their shit collapses, that's fine with me. They needed suicide nets for their fucking 9 to 5. So, again, New York City, trade city of America, basically, they can do this and they almost have no choice. Because if there's no international trade, a lot of people don't want to work, and there's no cryptocurrency, what the hell even is Wall Street then? What is it? Just someone prints free money and then gives it to a specific guy, and the guy counts his free money that he got from the government at Wall Street? That's what it is? Because that has nothing to do with the economy. Nobody gets hired from that, or nothing gets produced by that, right? So, yeah. Without crypto, America's fucked. New York City is fucked. And they deserve it. They deserve it for allowing it to get this far and acting like these people who are fucking everything up, ever had any validity to them whatsoever. Just so you could hear someone say, "Oh, well, that's nicer than if you had stood up for yourself. You're a nicer person that you didn't stand up for yourself. You know that you're the bigger person. Oh, now he's fucking with someone else because you didn't stand up for yourself, but you're just such a great person." Oh. And we're in other countries fighting about wars that don't matter. Isn't that great? We went to Africa to find Coney. And yeah, so those people that control the narrative, they're going to continue to control the narrative, and do not trust them. Understand that, first off, subjective value principle is real, right? But not all value is subjective. And so these idiots, they're giving you these ideas. Even if everyone agrees with them, it's not going to make your Bitcoin less valuable, okay? So if you're ever in a room and, 9 people, you're the 10th person, 9 people are telling you, "Oh, your Bitcoin isn't worth anything, give it to me so I can throw it out," keep your fucking Bitcoin. Okay? Just like you should keep your gold, just like you should keep a lot of things. But guess what? When your dollar, if you're ever in a situation where the dollar isn't, nobody wants your dollar, that dollar is just worthless now. You should make some origami. Whereas the Bitcoin actually is a program that can't be replicated and can be used for things and fits into something. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so the central banks, because they are worried about cryptocurrencies, will be speeding up their own digital currency creation, but I've already kind of explained to you that that's just negligible at best, and just ignore it, because they're basically already, most of the currency they create is digital, so just ignore. Something being digital has nothing to do with whether or not it's valuable, okay? That's not why cryptocurrency is valuable. In fact, it's valuable for the reason that it mimics actual physics and has it's actually useful, like an engineer could use it, okay? So what? Despite the current slump, many analysts expect, yeah, the crypto cap's probably going to be triple what it was at the start of this year by the end of this year, which just means that the industry has grown, which does mean that when it busts, the bust will be bigger. But the crypto bust isn't going to be that big. It's not going to be that big, because most cryptos bust before even like Dogecoin. Dogecoin is 19 cents, right? Now, crypto is still going strong, and Dogecoin busted. And it was like, why is that? Well, it's because it had its own lifespan, obviously. But what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that until some regulation comes down that makes it so it costs them money to print the worthless cryptocurrencies, there's really not going to be one universal crash. And meanwhile, all these little crashes come, and these little crashes are teaching people about why each currency is crashing. So, like I've been saying, actually, So you could say like all this lockdown shit is terrible, and it is terrible to a degree, but you know, everyone was prepared to agree to all the shit that they did before it happened, and then they agreed to it. Now, I don't know the set of circumstances, I don't know every circumstance that caused it, but really the problem isn't that they agreed to it, but that that it was just a couple of circumstances needed to change, and then all civilization goes to shit. So our civilization must have sucked ass. All right, and that's I can accept that. But now we are fully aware of this. It's like, oh shit. So like, that system was only worked because they never gave it the order to stop and all that. Like, I really can't trust all this. And everyone's kind of getting an education in like you can't trust giant bureaucracies. Of course, giant bureaucracies pretend to represent large communities. They are large communities. So what? What's a large community? It's just a big community. Stop. Start thinking objectively. Start separating things in your mind. Big community, that doesn't mean shit. In fact, it means I know less. I don't know any of those people. you know. And I've spoken about a lot today. I'm basically done. I'm basically done. Yeah, I think New York City is going to bring back its mojo this year because it has no fucking choice. And there's still enough people here to do it. And New York City has the right culture for it. Yeah, but I've been talking about a lot. And you'll notice I'm actually oddly very specific. And there might be some part of your brain that's like, oh, he's making a lot of this stuff up, or he's just saying what he wants to say. I'll give you a list of all my sources first off, but remember the stuff about the refugees and the guys I know, and that's all fucking real. Like the land, the stuff I own, the different countries, the different laws, the conversations with people about their medical, systems and all. That's all real life. You're just listening to a person, that's all. Just, you can go ahead and you don't have to agree with everything I fucking said or say or anything. Just when you're comparing it to other things you've heard, listened to, or, lived through even, just be aware how much of that was provided to you by actors. And really think about it and think about it again. Okay, maybe, I don't agree with everything this guy says, and I don't trust this guy, I don't know this guy. But I guess 60% of the people that I listen to about this at least are literally paid actors. So it's actually more suspicious they all say the same thing. Have that thought for a moment, please. I'm not telling you to agree with me, just for a moment, just think objectively. Please. Thank you for your time. Have a good evening. I can't believe I spent this much fucking time doing this. I need to go.